Well, good morning, everybody, and happy. It is definitely football Saturday. I'm Dr. Lauren Pitts.
And I am Ronnie Ransome. Welcome back to House Talk Pregame, episode 91.
91.
You know, I was thinking
a lot of episodes.
It is like we've averaged about 40 episodes a season. The first season last season we definitely had more episodes because we started earlier. But I was thinking like, man, we got to do something special for episode 100.
So what did you look to see what date that falls on? We got to have a 100th episode that would be, party or something.
So let's see, 92, 93, 94, 95, 6, 7, 8, 9. That'd be November 12th.
November 12th.
November 12th will be episode 100 of House Talk Pregame. That's crazy. Like,
okay. So we're gonna have to throw a party.
Yeah, we're gonna have to do something, you know.
100th. Look, let me make a note of that. 100th episode party. Gotta make it happen.
We're gonna see if we can get a special guest up here or something, you know, a collective of guests, you know.
Yeah.
I mean, hey,
special guests.
We doing the damn thing, you know, like we 91 episodes in. Yeah. Like I keep on trying to tell people, like, hey, you know, don't wait till it's too late to catch up now. All right. You know, we got plenty of episodes.
Don't despise small beginnings. Who are they? What's this HT pregame? Who's that Ronnie Ransome? Who's that Dr. Lumpus? Don't nobody know who they are. Okay.
And you know what's crazy? And we're gonna keep stacking these episodes because guess why?
Yes.
Like we are practicing patience.
Say it.
and patience is a real big thing for us today, especially on our episode when we're focusing on patience. And you know, not only the name of the game of it, but you know, patience is an asset for our players, but also for our coaches, the administrative staff of teams, even from the trainers to the equipment staff, to the parents, to the school. Like patience is a virtue, but patience is a talent too. And honestly, I think you have to be talented to have patience. And we're going to talk about why I think you have to be talented to have patience because, you know, patience is something that everybody talks about, but not everybody has. You know, just like in sports, you know, there's just certain things you can't coach. You can't coach speed. You can't coach size. And I mean, for those really true great legends, you can't coach patience. You can't coach just having that level of awareness and that level of being present without patience. That's so we're going to talk about that today. On top of also, we're going to update y'all on our leaderboard for these HBCU games. I kind of gave.
He cheated. He cheated.
Well, see what had happened is my record could have almost been perfect, but you know, because of my my bias and my subjectivity towards a certain pair of Bulldogs, you know, I could almost been perfect. But we'll get to that towards the end of the show. And we'll also give our week 2 predictions because there are some really good games in the HBCU world this week. I'm excited to see one game in particular today if it comes on TV. So we'll get to that. But so and also tomorrow's first week NFL Sunday. We were just talking about the Bills and the Rams game on Thursday. Hey, the Bills are legit. The Bills are legit. And also something I know you were talking about, you were watching the game on mute. But here's something to keep in mind too. We always talk about, you know, like for the average fan, you know, who watches the games and stuff like that, you know, they kind of are technical Tammies, you know, like they kind of live by this, you know, where, oh, well, you're on the field, so there's no excuses. You out there getting paid millions of dollars, or, you know, you're out there getting a scholarship. There should be no reason why you can't perform at the highest level all the time. There should be no reason why you out there making mistakes. This is all you do. You practice in college 20 hours a week at this. In the NFL, this is what you do for in on every week. Why are you making mistakes? Why are you out there frustrated? Why are you out there got stuff on your mind?
And they never put on a pair of pads, cleats, or nothing else.
Exactly.
All this crap to say. And it's like, and how long did you play when you was playing? Oh, shut up. Sitting.
In the midst of the game, one thing that, you know, I was paying attention to, and it kind of I started to notice it last year during the playoffs, but it's reared its ugly head again. You know, Jalen Ramsey is considered, you know, arguably the great, you know, the best cornerback in the league right now. He's had that title for about the last, I'd say, 4 or 5 seasons. But, you know, with that title also comes, you know, like, yeah, when you are considered the best at what you do in your sport, yeah, and everybody else is an alpha male in your sport, especially at your position, where, you know, having a level of confidence and bravado and just assuredness about yourself is at an all-time high playing cornerback. Yeah, you're gonna have people trying you. You're gonna have receivers trying you week in and week out. Or, you know, you might just gain a certain level of respect where people are like, you know what, we're not gonna try you. Like when we think of people who weren't tried at that level, prime time, Deion Sanders, you know, Darrelle Revis. But Jalen Ramsey's struggling. You know, he's struggling. If we go back to the NFC Championship game last year against the 49ers, he gave up a big play. If we go back to the Super Bowl, right before halftime, gave up a really big play to Jamar Chase right before halftime, and then coming right out of the half, gave up a touchdown that I believe T. Higgins right at the beginning of the third quarter. You know, the great and he talked about it on the podcast after the Super Bowl how, you know, yeah, those 2 plays, like, you know, he was, you know, the moment was, you know, really huge, like a lot was going on. You know, he made a mistake. But if we're being objective about it, you know, he even said, like, yeah, I didn't have a great game that game. Here we come, you know, game 1 of the season and whatnot. And for all the receivers who lined up in front of Jalen Ramsey in game 1, I think they had 7 catches for 124 yards and 2 total touchdowns against him in that game.
Yeah.
This is the best CB in the league right now. And people are not afraid of him. They're throwing at him more and more.
Speaks volumes.
And so, you know, you start to see the frustration. You start to see him getting mad, and you start to see him maybe, you know, not trust his technique at times during the game and stuff like that. You know, so that's something to keep an eye out for. You know, we always talk about how the game within the game and also the mental game within the mental game. You know, there's a lot of things that go on during the course of a game that a lot of the fans just don't get privy to see, or they don't know because they've never been in that situation. So, you know, I think that's something to be mindful of. And, you know, obviously, you know, wishing him a great season and stuff like that. He's a great player and everything. But when you start to notice those things, when you start to see somebody who has to have that reputation and stuff like that, like living up to that reputation day in and day out, week in and week out during the course of a season where, you know, the best want the best. So, you know, that was something that I noticed during the game on Thursday. But outside of that, man, the Bills are legit. Like,
look, and you know what's so funny? You know, I'll be looking. I'm like, oh wait, let's see, do we play them during the regular season?
Do y'all?
I don't know. No. I was like, whoo, you know, certain teams you be like, oh, thank you. I don't see them no time soon. You know, but for real, I do. It's like I said, I was glad that we had to play Denver preseason. Well, I don't want none of us right now. Don't want none of right now.
Hey, you know what? I just saw an ad. I know Russell is a fellow 804 native like myself from Richmond and whatnot. But now I know he, you know, look, Russell loves his wife, right? Russell loves his wife, and I'm not knocking him for loving his wife. But Russell, no, he was lying on this ad. It was asking, what song do you get hyped to for a Thursday night game?
What'd he say?
He gonna talk about some Level Up by Sierra. And I'm like,
happy wife, happy life. Isn't that what y'all say?
Hey, look.
That's what y'all say.
Hey, look, now, I know he promoting his wife and kudos to him. I'm not knocking him for that. But Russell, you know damn well you ain't listening to no Level Up by Sierra before you walk out there in front of 80,000 fans about to play the Seahawks on Sunday. Come on now. Come on now.
Stop it. Be get in touch with your authentic self.
Yeah, but it's all good. It's all no judgment, Russell. You know, no judgment. We would love to have you on the show, man. You know, you're 804 native like myself, so you know, hey, you know, I'll look. I gotta play Level Up to get you on here. We'll level on up and play Level Up all you want to on here.
There it is.
Yeah, so it's a great weekend for football. A lot of great college games coming on today. NFL starts tomorrow. Man, so Dr. Pitts, do you have any mental health tips of the week this week?
Yep, it's short, sweet, and to the point. Never pray for patience. Don't ever ask for patience. No. Dr. Pitts, why you say that? Because
If
Take your time. Take your time, Pastor. Take your time.
if
They
you
need.
pray for patience, if you ask for patience, you are inviting the floodgates to open up against you, to give you all types of stuff that you are going to have patience for. You don't. And so it's like, oh, well, Dr. Pitts, well, what do I do then if I don't ask for patience? You have to hold yourself accountable. First and foremost, you have to take a look at why you're so impatient in the first place. Impatience is all about control. You want to control everything. You want everything to be your way, the way you want it, how you, it's all about being a control freak. And if things aren't going the way you want them to go, when you want them to go, how you want them to go, in the time frame that you want them to go, you're acting crazy. You have to work on that. That is going to require a self-check. It's going to require some self-reflection and some soul searching to find out the deeper issues behind why you are so controlling and why you feel like you so desperately have to have everything your way. Because at the end of the day, you can't control anybody but yourself. And oh, by the way, there's a whole story, Ronnie. Well, you got road rage, right? You have road rage. How do you know that the person in front of you going slow didn't just get news that a loved one passed away or something like that, and they're trying to get to the hospital or to where the family members are, and it's a new area for them, and they're trying to listen to the GPS driving, you tailgating them, blowing the horn, flipping them off and everything else. You never know what is causing somebody to behave in a way that's triggering your impatience. So rather than flipping out and acting crazy because things aren't going the way you want them to go and be, I don't have no patience. Look, and I can hear my husband now saying, because I have a confession. I'm disclosing. You ready, Ron?
Uh-oh.
I am the queen of leaving a cart of groceries in a grocery store and walking out.
You don't do self-checkout?
Okay, so here's the thing. So let me just tell you. So Ronnie, I'd never seen anything like it until I moved here to Texas. One of the grocery stores, I have 2 grocery stores literally right around the corner from my housing development. One of them is not too bad when it comes to self-checkout, but the other one, this is something I had never seen before. The other one only has 4 cashiers. Everything is self-checkout. Everything is self-checkout. So depending on what time of the day or the year it is, I kid you not, the lines for self-checkout are going to be snaked all the way out from the thing, all the way back down the aisles. And I'm like, so now I'm over it. How I deal with my impatience where that's concerned is I don't grocery shop. I order the groceries.
Oh, that work. Yeah, that definitely does work too.
I order my groceries and have them delivered and don't trip. But I am guilty. Dr. Pitts is being totally transparent. I confess, I have on more than a couple of occasions, I have left a whole cart of groceries sitting in the middle of the floor. And my husband will say, I guess we're leaving. I'm so out of here. I can't stand it. That's the thing that's the area where I have the least amount of patience. He would say that if you mess with my money, if you mess with my family, or if you're hindering me in any way from getting things accomplished that I need to get accomplished, he says that that's when I tend to be the most impatient. Overall, he says that he believes that I'm a fairly patient person, but it's about control. It's about, you know what, I'm not able to control this situation, and the lack of control does something to me. So we have to look deeper to get a handle on what it is that's fueling the impatience. That's all I have.
I wholeheartedly 1000% agree with your tip of do not pray for patience.
No, sir.
You know, and I always ask my clients that, like, do you pray for patience? And I'm like, all the time. And I'm just like,
stop it.
I'm like, that might be your problem. That might be
right.
What you talking about? Like, you want me to be impatient? I was like,
yeah.
kind of like you already are, you know. So since we're doing confessionals this morning, I know Catholic Mass is on Saturday, so since we're doing confessionals this morning, okay. I would say that I'm a fairly patient person if I'm being objective about myself. However, my kryptonite, my Achilles heel, that, you know, Steve Harvey said, God said, don't trip, he ain't through with me yet.
Yeah.
Is my road rage.
Uh-oh.
If I'm being honest, I always, you know, I have to watch myself now, because I never wanted to be a situation where I, you know, tell somebody about themselves and call them everything but a blessed child of God behind the wheel, and then they end up in my therapy office.
Right. They be like, you that guy. That's, oh my goodness, that was you.
I'll be like, man, well, so let's talk about it, you know.
Let's process.
You know, in therapy we process. So let's process this. You know, what could have been done differently? Let's reframe this. I like CBT. Let's reframe this real quick. What could we have thought differently in that moment?
Right.
But yeah, now road rage is something that I am terrible with at times. I have gotten better, but you know, these new drivers and these out-of-state drivers, man, I don't know. The DMV test must have gotten a lot easier from when I took it, because I don't know what the requirements are.
Everybody getting the license now. I used to say, what y'all get your license at Acme? And for people that don't know, it's not familiar, Acme is a grocery store on the East Coast.
We used to say 7-Eleven here in Virginia, you know.
It's like they had to have gotten it from there.
7-Eleven must have been passing out those licenses. Because but I definitely agree with, you know, don't pray for patience.
No.
And, you know, outside of that, it's funny, that was going to be my mental health tip of the week too, especially for my fellas, you know, because it's like, you know, I think for us, you know, like men, I think when you have a lack of patience, it kind of bleeds into, you know, overall lack of discipline. You know, because, you know, by definition, I looked up the definition of patience, and, you know, by definition, patience is the capacity to accept or tolerate delay, trouble, or suffering without getting angry or upset. You know, and so I think a lot of times, especially, you know, and I hate to single them out, but I think the newer generation, like, you know, my age and younger, I think one of the things that, you know, the just society today has done is has robbed us of our natural level of patience.
Called the microwave generation, right?
Exactly. I always say, like, you know, we want microwave results. We want to just pop something in the microwave, press a button, and a minute later, boom, we got a fresh cooked meal. You know, nobody wants to go to the store no more, get the ingredients, chop everything up, get everything together, season it, marinate it, let it sit, put it in the oven or the smoker, let it cook all day. And then by the time the sun go down, you got you a fresh cooked meal. But that process of doing it, enjoying that process, you know, the 76ers have a slogan, trust the process. And, you know, when we think about that, you know, trusting the process, well, what does that look like? Well, part of trusting that process, part of having trust is having the patience that it might not unfold in front of me right now. It might not, you know, fruition or manifest itself in front of me right now. But if I can stay consistent longer than I'm inconsistent, then by virtue, I should be able to reap the benefits of my rewards.
I tell my clients the same thing, that, like, look, throughout, like, you know, when you can see the discomfort kicking in, trust the process.
Yeah. You know, because I think it's so many things that, and I will say this, you know, and this might go a little bit off tangent a little bit, but I think since it's on the topic of patience, I think it's important for me to say this. I think especially, and I'm just talking about us as Americans, because I can't speak for the rest of the world. Because I know in the rest of the world, they have no choice but to wait. They have no choice but to have patience, because there's just a lot of things that they're not afforded. Granted, there's a lot of things in this country that a lot of us are not afforded either. You know, some of us can't even afford clean water, you know, how, like, you know, Flint and now Jackson, Mississippi, what they got going on. But I think too many times that in our society, especially in American society, because we have access to so many things, and because we can normally get what we want in relatively quick amount of time, Like, just think about it. 10 years ago, could you have fathomed getting a package 2 days later after you order it? Like, where you can press a button, order it, it's processed that same day, and then guaranteed hella high water 2 days later, it's at your door. And
some of them can tell you if you order within the next 2 hours, you'll have it between 7 and 11 tomorrow morning.
See, that's that big city life. See, here in Ettrick, Virginia, it's 2 days. You get that.
Man. You order within, you put something in your cart, you order within the next 2 hours, they call it overnight. You can have it by 7 a.m. tomorrow, no later than 11 tomorrow morning. You sure enough can. It's me how I know. Thank you.
We're working on exploring your levels of patience, huh?
Yeah.
And so, like, because it's crazy. How many times you find yourself ordering something and you'll literally look at it and it'd be like, well, for free, it'll get here in 10 days. But for $8, we can get it here in 4 days. You like,
right?
Shoot, let me get this 4 days real quick. I pay that
$8. I got that.
And so it's like, so I think part of that is, obviously, when as you build yourself up, financially and stuff like that, you can afford to probably have less patience with certain things. But I think also when that message is portrayed to the masses, I think it builds a false perception that you can get anything you want right then and there. And that's not the case. Anything worth having is not always easy. 9 times out of 10, anything that's really worth having is not easy to obtain at all. Because if it was easy, it wouldn't be worth having.
And everybody would have it. So where's the worth in it? That's right.
Exactly. So, I'm glad we're talking about this topic of patience today because, I think too many times, not only just in society, but also for our athletes, I think, now patience is something that is waning even in sports. For example, I think one of the things that I've been thinking about, myself as a father and whatnot, is obviously I have a son and everything, and he's almost a year and a half, so sports is technically on the horizon and whatnot. But I'll be honest with you, like, granted, if he wants to play sports when he gets older and whatnot, hey, I'm a pour into him as my parents poured into me their resources and whatnot, because the resources they poured into me, definitely I felt like at that point in time gave me a decent advantage and a really good chance to display a good version of myself out there to coaches and whatnot. But nowadays, I mean, you got like kids, like you ain't getting looked at by middle school, like, unless you just a late bloomer and you really pop out on the scene, like you really kind of think that by high school, you really ain't gonna get seen by nobody. And so like, it really speeds this timeline up of getting to a certain level, doing a lot to, be seen by these coaches and whatnot. Once again, as we talk about this rush process, trusting the process, but also rushing it at the same time, like trying to dictate a process, or in other words, trying to play God. At the end of the day, I think when you lack patience, you try to play God at the end of the day, or Most High, spiritually, whatever you worship or look to. Anytime that you try to go against the flow of nature, you are trying to dictate nature. And so I think patience is, and at the beginning of the show I said patience is a talent. Because I think about it like this. I think humans possess all the talents in the world that we need to survive on a day-to-day basis. However, those who don't work to build their talents lose out and waste those talents. So everybody has the ability to express patience and practice patience.
Right.
But how many people actually practice patience?
Right.
We talked about not praying for patience. Well, if you don't want me to pray for it, well, what the hell should I do? You should practice it.
That's right.
Well,
Every day.
What does practicing patience look like? Well, once again, the definition of patience is the capacity to accept or tolerate delay, trouble, or suffering without getting angry or upset. So let's look at that from an athlete's point of view. Obviously, most athletes, when they start playing a sport, whether it's football, basketball, baseball, softball, track, whatever the case may be, 95% of kids who start playing sports have a dream of wanting to play at a professional league of, whatever their sport is. Most of them do. As they get older, a lot of that number, dwindles and dwanes and stuff like that, because, most people start to realize like, okay, that is a taller task than what I thought it was when I first started.
Right.
But for those who, that's still their goal, that's still their objective, is to reach that level, to see it through in an instance. You already have to have a level of patience. Why? Mm-hmm. One, because stating the obvious, you just have to be a certain age. You have to be a certain age. And for football, for example, you have to be out of high school for 3 years.
Yeah.
So right then and there, even for a football player to even sniff the NFL,
mm-hmm.
you got to be out of high school for 3 years, or at least be 21.
Yeah.
So,
it's not like basketball. You can't go straight from high school into the NFL.
You got to wait a year.
Yeah.
And we've seen, how people have tried to manipulate that and get around mm-hmm. that. And there's been arguments for, well, if they're good enough, let them play, they'll figure it out and things like that. But overall, I think for an athlete to have a level of patience, to understand and trust the process of whatever it is they're trying to do in whatever sport they're playing, if you don't have that, I think oftentimes you start to see those players who, the could have beens and the would have beens and the should have beens, not having that level of patience and understanding and awareness to be like, okay, maybe this linear path that I'm trying to go on, maybe that's not the path I need to go on right now. Maybe I have to take an alternate route to get to where I need to get to. But when we become so hell-bent and so fixated and so tunnel vision on doing it our way and not trusting the process, oftentimes I think when we say trust the process, we think that it's the process that we create for us all the time. Yeah, you can have a routine and a schedule and goals and things like that. Obviously, yeah, and you should. But however, trusting the process also means that with anything, look at any given game. For example, the Bills on Thursday. The Bills had 4 turnovers, 3 of those in the first half.
Oh, wow.
They had 3 turnovers in the first half. Josh Allen had 2 interceptions in the first half. Most times, most games, if you have 4 turnovers in a game, you probably are getting blown out. Wow. If you have 4 turnovers in a game, you are probably getting blown out. But for them to be able to trust the process, trusting the process also means having a level of patience of getting to halftime, revisiting the game plan. Okay, what worked, what didn't work. All right. Yeah. We know this is working. How can we exploit this a little bit more? We know this isn't working. So what's our alternative? What's our hot route to this? What's our different blocking package to this thing right here? So we can better try and get this to get the working for us. Yeah. Trusting that plan means having the coach and the team be able to communicate with each other like, hey, coach, when we line up in this formation right here, they show us this front. We didn't really get a good look at this front during practice this week. So maybe we need to try and switch it up a little bit. Having that patience to understand and being able to analyze and read and be able to see things that you might not be able to see on film or even during practice, but seeing it in the game and having that patience to know that, okay, we can trust this process. We see that for them, it turned out for them to win the game.
We see that a lot. I feel like patience comes up so much in sports, and I feel like we hear it, well, during football season, we hear it more where quarterbacks are concerned than anything else, because they're like, what do we hear all the time? Tom Brady is patient, right? He's just Aaron Rodgers, patient, right? They're built, especially those pocket quarterbacks. They are patient, patient. And it goes back to what I said last week. It's like they're reading that field, just like the Terminator, right? And and there's a level of patience that they have that speaks to the quality of QB that they are, that helps, because when you're trying to force a play, when you're trying to force the pass down the field, when you're trying to force the sack or whatever the case may be, chances are you're gonna get the penalty. I know all about that. Gonna end up getting these stupid penalties. You're gonna end up using large. You're gonna end up, in essence, like you said, you're gonna give the daggone game away. And when you look at it closely, a element of that is a lack of patience. It's a lack of patience, and but Ronnie, here's what I want to tease out a little bit. Isn't it fair to say that when we see regardless of what the sport is, when we see a lack of patience, we're looking at this athletic competition, but isn't it fair to say that it's actually the individuals that have the issue with patience, and it's coming together as a team? But what does that look like when you've got multiple players that personally struggle with impatience? How does that break the team down?
So it does. So, one of Nick Saban has a quote That's a really good quote. And he
He was on
says
a Today Show the other day talking about mental health. Go ahead.
He was?
Yeah, he was.
Mm-hmm. Interview his players' mental health. Like, man, you got Nick Saban as a coach. I'd have had some coaches, you know. I'm pretty sure.
Oop, you're breaking up. So he's having some technical difficulties. So while we're waiting for Ronnie to get his technical difficulties straightened out, you know, one of the things that we have to think about when it, you're back. You broke up.
Okay, I didn't know if I was frozen.
No, you were frozen. Go ahead.
Comcast gonna have to sponsor us or something. But no, so the quote is that mediocre people can't stand to be around high level people, and high level people can't stand to be around mediocre people.
Mm-hmm.
And why is that? Because when you look at it from a team perspective, you're absolutely right. It's not the patience level of the team, it's the collective of the individuals that make the team and their level of their own individual patience. One of the things you always hear coaches talk about is buying into the team, buying into us, buying into the idea and the process and the values of the team. Because if you have people who do not buy in, then you have people who might not understand that things take time.
Yeah.
You know, when you bring in a new coaching staff, or you bring in a new group of players and things like that, you always hear about buying into this new program, buying into this new idea, buying into this philosophy. Why? Because, like I said, when let's look at the offensive line, for example, you have 5 individuals who have to, every single play, have to work as a unit. Now, they all have 5 individual tasks, but sometimes those individual tasks intersect with each other. Sometimes you have double teams. Sometimes you have people who are pulling, and you have to replace the block. Sometimes you have people who are pass prone on one side and run and green blocking on the other side. So everybody, even though everybody has their own individual job, they have to work as a unit.
Right.
So, but when you have one person not buying into it, when you have, let's say you have the right guard who doesn't necessarily agree to the double team technique with the center, or they don't agree to the double team technique with the tackle, and they're doing it wrong. And now you're wondering why the 3 technique keep on slipping the double team and getting in the backfield making a tackle. It's because somebody doesn't trust the process. It's because somebody doesn't trust the technique. And when you don't trust that, and you don't have the patience to either learn it or communicate with your coach, like, hey, I'm not getting this. Can we figure something out that can work for us? You have those issues. Yeah, the team can start to fracture and crumble because you don't have people buying into everything that encompasses what a team is supposed to be.
Yeah.
But that requires patience. Because I tell people all the time, you know, when Coach Scott and them came to Virginia State my junior year, you know, like, we were excited. It was a brand new coach. He had a brand new philosophy. He commanded our respect, you know, like, and we started to slowly buy in. But if you'd have told me at halftime of our first game against Fayetteville State in 2013, how do I feel about the buy-in of this program? I'd have been like, I mean, it looked like, you know, new year, same team, if you ask me. Yeah. But, you know, we ended up winning that game. We scratched and clawed and fought our way back to win the game. But one of the things that we learned is that we have to be patient and really trust this process.
Right.
Like, we went from being the laughingstock of the CIAA to a legit contender for the national playoffs year in and year out. But that requires a level of patience, and sometimes I think when you can't see the end result right then and there, you feel like, well, how much time do I really have? Like, and I think our perception of time as individuals is also a reason why it's hard for some people to really buy into the idea of patience. You know, granted, obviously, once again, for the technical Tammys out there, you are not guaranteed tomorrow, next week, next month, next year. None of that. You're not even guaranteed the next hour. None of us are. I get all that, right? But I can't make everything happen today either. I can't amass a wealth of fortune. I can't grow my hair back today. I can't lose 30 pounds today. I can't go to LA today. I can't do all those things today.
You know what that is, Ronnie? That's go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, go ahead. You got it.
It's attitude. It's attitude. People have a stank attitude when it comes to not only waiting, but trusting the process, right? And how do we learn how to trust the process and to change our attitude? You got to relax. You have to relax and know that and this is the way I present it to my clients, Ronnie. I'll say, well, what is the absolute worst case scenario that can happen? If hypothetically, right, if and I'll take it out of the context of sports for a minute, but if the dishes aren't done right now, I told you to do those dishes right now, what's going to happen if they're not done right now? Are we never going to eat again? Is the 20 minutes from now, is the electricity being shut off and we're not going to water? Like,
are the ants going to have a whole fortress built on top of your plates in the next 20 minutes?
Right. Like, why does it have to be done right now? And it goes back to control. So a big part of it is just learning to relax. It was last week, I needed ink for the printer. And I told you, I don't like to go in stores. I don't. And my husband, his crazy self, said, I can see where this is going. We went in the store, went and got the ink cartridges, picked up a couple of other office supplies. And because I had to pick up a couple of other office supplies, the cashier in electronics where the ink cartridges were had to put one of those real thick, heavy plastic lock boxes on it and said, when you get up front, tell them to put the thing on it and push the red button and it'll pop off. My husband said, I see where this is going. I was like, because he already knew. So we get up front and they couldn't get that box off, right? But you will be so proud of me because I did exactly what I said. Because he said, babe, just relax. You need the ink. We're on a short time window here because you've got to get back. You have sessions. He said they're going to get the box off. Now, I'm not going to say that I didn't feel like my head was going to pop off because I was really, really getting agitated because my thing was, I said to the girl when she put the box on, can you escort us up front and because the mere fact that you're saying to me to tell them how to take it off tells me they're not going to be able to get that thing off. I already know. My psychic energy has kicked in and I know they are not going to be able to get that box off of that daggone ink cartridge. It took them 20 minutes to get that box off that ink cartridge, but I didn't walk out. I stayed there and I'm like, I did my little breathing, but I literally inside, it was a bonfire because I'm like, are you serious? But you have to relax, Ronnie. We have to be willing to relax because doing that can be instrumental in helping us to do better. And that's now bringing it back to sports. You get taken out the game, you need to bring it down a notch. You need to learn how to center yourself.
Yeah. Because if you get too overworked up or too overhyped, or you're not present enough, or you're not really being aware enough, you can start anytime you make an impulsive choice or decision.
Yep.
It's probably not going to work out in your favor. Yeah. Obviously in sports, you can sometimes, like the really great ones can get away with making an impulsive decision, for example, now the no look pass is becoming more of a talked about thing, amongst quarterbacks and stuff like that. Highly risky,
That's Patrick Mahomes' forte, isn't it?
Patrick Mahomes, Matthew Stafford, Aaron Rodgers. It's a couple of them who have that level of confidence and that level of awareness and things like that. But even getting to that level of having that patience in their abilities and that confidence in their abilities, to understand breaking down game film. And I think a lot of times, once again, like when you can trust the process, when you can do the groundwork and do the things every day that can really quell those anxieties. We know that when you can quell an anxiety, that brings a level of comfort, a level of assuredness, a level of reassurance for you that, okay, I know I can do this. Or if this comes up, I'm prepared for this. It won't catch me off guard where I have to make a haste decision. So
Can I clinically chime in on that when you finish that thought?
Go ahead. Yeah, you got it.
So I was just going to say that's spot on. And when you talk about anxiety within the context of patients, you got to be able to identify your triggers, folks. If you can't put your finger on the pulse of what it is that's influencing you to be impatient, you're going to continue to lose that battle. You're going to continue to lose that fight. You have to know. I'm so sick and tired of hearing people say, Dr. Pitts, this is just the way I am. Say that to me one more again. Don't say that to me no more. Make me lose my patience. You stop copping out. Stop talking about this is just the way I am. There's an underlying reason for everything, Ronnie.
Oh, yeah.
There's an underlying reason for everything. And there's something, whether it's on the football field, on the basketball court, in the pool, on the baseball diamond, whatever it is, personally, in the locker room, before you even come out for the game, if something is triggering you, it's going to throw you off. And if you don't know how to identify them and manage them, you have to be able to know. So here's the clinical recommendation for that. In sports play and out of sports play, identify what your triggers are. Like, take the time to think, what situations and circumstances do I find myself being impatient? Athletically, let the ref or the umpire make a bad call. Oh, folk in the ref space, stay. Oh dear God, can you please back up? You about to be. And how many times have we seen players thrown out the game because of a bad call? Really? Sit your butt down. What are you doing? Complete lack of patience. You feel offended, you feel violated, you feel injustice has happened, and now you're behind us on your way down that tunnel. You don't like it, room.
I ain't gonna lie though, sometimes in refs, especially them pass interference calls that they do or don't make sometimes, man, like they're really and I think it's really important for us to have when we think about athletes, we always talk about, athletes always during the off season and things like that, what can I do better? What can I do better? What can I do to work on my game and get better and things like that? Part of that is, like you said, is identifying those triggers, because as much as we always talk about, as much as the game, you have to have your body physically ready. You have to be physically in shape and stuff
physical
like that.
Health.
Your mental health, that we always talk about, sports are 90% mental and 10% physical. And there's a reason for that, because especially in football, if you lose the battle of the game at the line of scrimmage because you're having a tit for tat with the other player and they get into your head, or they say something to you, or they're just egging you on all game, and you start to lose your patience, and instead of it being the team game, it's now a me game. You definitely will, you won't be able to maximize your talent and your potential because you're so worried about what the other person's saying, because that's a trigger for you. And as soon as they trigger you, you lose all your patience, and now it's all about you and him instead of me, us versus them. So, but part of that also is reflecting on what occurs when you are impatient. One of the things I like to work with my clients on, and I like to talk to people about, is, understanding the concept of CBT, or cognitive behavioral therapy. And, not to get too clinical on it, but basically the idea of CBT is to, understand that our thoughts correlate our feelings, which lead us to action or inaction or expression of our feelings. Indeed. And so I always tell people all the time, your feelings are not facts. Your feelings are an indicator. They're an alarm system. They're telling you, like, hey, I'm perceiving something from externally or internally. So now that I'm feeling this, now you have to make the choice on, do I act on this, or do I not act on it and just let it pass? But that starts with understanding your thoughts. So when you get triggered and you start to feel that level of impatience, what are the thoughts that are running through your mind? Is it something that you feel like you're trying to control? Is it something that you feel like that you're not good enough at? Is it something that you feel like, that, I'm not getting this from my team or from my coaches? Understanding those thoughts and how that makes you feel can help you better understand, like, what actions or what inactions do I need to take in this situation?
Regulate those emotions.
Yeah,
it's
absolutely.
It's understanding, and you said that beautifully,
and I think I touched on it last week too, that people don't realize that their thoughts and their feelings are the remote control that determines the vibrational frequency that their mind is operating on. And that vibrational frequency that your mind is on is what you're emitting, right? Hence why an opponent can pull you off your square. Hence why an opponent or your opponents can draw you off sides. Hence why your opponents can really psych you out and have you so discombobulated that now you're impatient with yourself. You're beating yourself in the helmet, and you're banging on the ground. You're doing all types of crazy stuff. You're in the ref's face. You're fighting on the field. You're doing all this craziness because you couldn't regulate your emotions, and your inability to regulate your emotions heightened your triggers and set your impatience ablaze. So now you're out of control. You're out of control. Your teammates are having to hold you back and grab you by the back of your jersey and pull you out the or off the pile because y'all acting a fool. Bench is clear. It's open. Wow! Why both teams on the field? What just happened? What just happened? Can't nobody regulate their whole team. Everybody just stop regulating their emotions.
Hey, it's up after
big
that.
psychotic episode on the field.
Hey, or sometimes they coming together and be like, hey, we need to go in this practice real quick. So let's just start this fight real quick so we can get out of practice. Let's lose our patience as a team with this practice.
Hey, let the secret out the bag.
I want the first one. But I think that's extremely important. And also, we were talking about this also earlier. One of the other things that athletes I should definitely be mindful of when in regards to patience is having patience with your personal goals and team goals, but more specifically your personal goals too. Because, for example, if you are a scrawny receiver coming into college, you only about $160, $170 soaking wet, about 5'11", 6 foot, you ain't got your grown man body yet. It takes time. It takes time going into the gym, lifting those weights, increasing your calorie intake, staying consistent with it, upping your protein intake to see you put on that muscle mass and put on that body weight. So that way, when you are out there in the throes of a football game, you're not getting beat up and banged up and bruised up and everything. It can't go the next week. But having that patience for your goals. Yeah. My high school principal, Mr. Cunningham, used to always say every school year, he was always like, begin with the end in mind. That's good. He said, before you take your first step, before you start on your journey, whatever your journey is, start with the end in mind. Because if you start walking without the end in mind, you'll be walking forever. You'll never know. You'll never know when you reach your destination. So start with the end in mind, but also trust the process too. Yeah. I always tell people, I think one of the things that we have a hard time with sometimes is that when we start with the end in mind, or when we think about the end result, the end goal, when it doesn't get there fast enough, when it doesn't get there in our timeline, when we think it should get there, we scrap it. We say it's not good enough anymore. We say like, well, I'll never achieve this. But
I'm not scrapping it, Ronnie. My Cowboys are going to win a Super Bowl before I die.
Well, I think
Don't do that.
Who was it?
We've been getting along really well today.
Who in the Bible lived to about 800? Was it Noah? No, Noah ain't lived to 800. Somebody lived to about 800 in the Old Testament. I can't remember who it was. It was somebody very prominent.
Was it Solomon? No, he had 800 wives. He was patient like a mouse.
Man,
he had like 800-900 wives. He epitomized patience.
Ain't enough happy lives to make all them wives happy and all. But so I think for our athletes, when you begin with the end in mind, understand that don't lose sight of the end because you want to rush to the end.
Right. That's good.
Understand that, and also when you prepare with the end in mind, also understand that that's not the end. Yeah. That's the end of this goal. That's the end of this journey. But when you reach that goal, when you succeed that, when you check it off your list and things like that, that automatically ignites and starts a brand new journey. Yeah. Your journey just don't end there when you accomplish that thing. For example, when a player gets drafted to the NFL, that's not the end of their journey. Their journey is
the beginning, actually.
Beginning.
Yeah.
How many times when you graduate high school, you graduate college, or do anything, they say, well, now the real work begins.
That's right.
Because everything leading up to that was the process. I think a lot of times people lose patience because they get shocked by actually achieving something. They get surprised when they achieve something. Like, this wasn't what you were working for the whole time.
Right.
Don't let it shock you or surprise you. This is what you were working towards. This was the end goal you had in mind when you started your journey to begin with. So why are you letting it shock you? Why are you letting it catch you off guard?
Because they didn't really believe they were going to achieve it, Ronnie. It was the outward expression was camouflaging doubt. And then when they really achieved it, their doubt got exposed.
Exactly. I wholeheartedly agree with that. So yeah, don't let your dreams or your end goal shock you or catch you off guard. Have patience, but also be prepared to reach your goal. Because when you fail to prepare, you're preparing to fail.
Yeah.
And
you
so
also have
especially with, I'm sorry, I mean, I just have
no,
one.
I just have one. No, go ahead.
I just have one more point for patience. Also being prepared for the unexpected. And I wanted to kind of talk about this real quick, because one of the things that I try to do as a clinician is I try to destigmatize emotions. And what I mean by that is, I think a lot of times emotions get a very bad rep, especially the difficult emotions. Like when we talk about depression, sadness, hopelessness, worthlessness, anger, frustration, those emotions get a bad rep far too many times than they should. But another emotion that gets a really bad rep, and another feeling, is anxiety. And I think for an athlete, I think you have to have a healthy level of anxiety. Yeah. Everybody has anxiety to begin with. And let me just say that every person that walks this earth has some form of anxiety. It's crucial for your human structure, for you as a human, to function with some level of anxiety. Another way to say anxiety, especially in the sports world, another way to say anxiety is anticipation. How much do you hear in sports that when a great player just has a level of anticipation that you just can't coach? They have a level of anticipation that you can't teach. That anticipation is just their anxiety working in their favor. Yeah. That's all that is. When you hear them talk about quarterbacks anticipating when the wide receiver is going to break, not waiting for him to break. Yeah, that's his anxiety. Yeah. But even with anxiety, when you have a healthy level of anxiety is nothing but an alarm system in your mind telling you, like, hey, we're not too sure about this situation or this person or this thing. So we need to add some resources. We need to generate some assuredness in our mind to let us know that when this situation or this person or this thing comes up again, we know how to deal with it. Indeed. In other words, in sports, that's when you see a defensive front, or you see them, go box one in basketball, or you see them do whatever formations they have in baseball or hockey or soccer, whatever the case may be, and you've never seen it before. Now your anxiety's triggered, because you're like, oh snap, like, I'm concerned because I don't know how to address the situation. So you become hyper aware. And we know that becoming hyper aware in certain situations is a great thing. Yeah, absolutely. So, but we also know that excessive anxiety can rob you of your talent. Excessive anxiety can rob you of your decision making. Excessive anxiety can rob you of being the athlete that you should be. So I say all that to say, prepare for the unexpected, but don't let the unexpected paralyze you. And here's the other thing too, and I'll close this out with that so that we can do our picks. If you are an athlete, a coach, a parent of an athlete, regardless of where you are in the athletic journey and what your role is, if you find yourself dealing with, and I don't even want to limit it to severe anxiety, because it may be helpful to see a mental health practitioner if you find yourself starting to deal with anxiety more frequently and it's impacting you in a negative way. You could benefit from going into therapy to address that, to learn some tools and strategies and interventions that you can put in place so that it doesn't escalate to an anxiety disorder. We say it time and time again on HT, untreated mental illness doesn't just go away.
It's like anything else. It will morph. If just like water dripping on a rock created the Grand Canyon, if you leave it untreated, life is going to continue to happen. Life is going to continue to throw fast pitch curveballs at you at any given time. It is absolutely imperative to try to plan for as much of the unexpected as you possibly can. But the reality of it is we can't plan for everything. There are things that life is going to throw at us that, you know what, you just don't see it coming. And if your anxiety gets to a level where it consumes you, you have a problem. So don't wait until it gets so bad that it's ruling you in a negative way. Be proactive. When you realize you're starting to have an issue with it, talk to somebody. Get in, go to 3-4 sessions with a mental health practitioner that can help you to learn better ways to manage the anxiety and find out what the root of it is in the first place. But just to wrap this piece up with patience before we go into our picks, look at patience as the combination of persistence and time, right? You have to keep at it. You have to know that it is going to take time to accomplish the things that you want to get accomplished, whether it's winning, developing a rhythm with your team, getting into alignment with your coach and training staff. Like Ronnie gave a beautiful example of when you have a whole new team coming in because the previous coach, got fired or retired or died or whatever the case may be. It's transitional, right? And you have to be able to trust the process in order to be able to maximize on the opportunities that are being presented to you. Learn how to manage your pain, both physical and mental pain. Learn how to get rid of the bitterness that can often fuel impatience. Learn how to improve your ability to delay gratification. And Ronnie just said it beautifully. Focus on the journey. And folks, here's how you do all of that. You wait. You wait. And I'm using wait as an acronym. You need to have a better understanding of why patience is important to you. In other words, what will it cost you to be more patient? And what are the benefits of being more patient? What is it costing you to be impatient? And what are the benefits of being impatient? You want to heighten your awareness of how you're currently feeling. You want to identify ways to regulate your emotions, and you want to transcend and connect with the self so that you can fulfill your purpose both in and out of athletic play. You got to learn to be patient, folks. It's practice. See patience as a muscle. If you don't exercise it, it'll grow weaker and weaker and weaker and weaker and weaker. If we want to get better at anything, we have to feed it. We got to feed it. We have to feed our willingness and our desire and our efforts to be more patient. Ronnie, let's make these picks and wrap up for today.
Absolutely. And thank you for wrapping that up so beautifully as you always do. So, all right, y'all. So going back to week one of our picks. So like I said, so through week one, Dr. Pitt's record is 5-5. My record is 8-2. Should have been 9-1, but I can't vote for Bowie, so it is what it is. And then our guest last week, Chris, if you're watching today, you also went 5-5 alongside Dr. Pitts. I told you can't listen to everybody just because they're from up north, so it's all good. So this week, our first game is Elizabeth City versus Livingstone. Dr. Pitts, who you got?
Elizabeth City versus Livingstone. Elizabeth City.
Elizabeth City?
Mm-hmm.
I'm going with ECSU as well. All right, so our next one, and this is the game that I'm excited for. Jackson State had a very statement win last week against FAMU, but they play Tennessee State this week, Eddie George's team. So who you got this week, Dr. Pitts?
I'm going with Jackson State.
Yeah, I see you came around. It's all right.
Shut up.
Sometimes.
It's ignorant all your life.
Our next game, and I believe this is a classic game real quick. Actually, I'm sorry. The Elizabeth City game is a Down East Vikings Classic. I apologize for not announcing that. That's against Livingstone. Jackson State and Tennessee State is the Southern Heritage Classic. They're playing in Memphis today. And then our next game is the Chattanooga Scenic HBCU Football Classic between Fort Valley State and Kentucky State in Chattanooga, Tennessee. So, Dr. Pitts, who you got between Fort Valley and Kentucky State?
Kentucky
State? I'm going Fort Valley. This week we got this is the rest of these games are not classic games in any way. These are just the HBCU games that are going on. We got Winston-Salem State versus North Carolina Central. Who you got?
Oh,
just to provide some context, Winston-Salem is a D2 and Central is FCF. And it's not the Winston from 10 years ago. I'll just put that out there too. If you know, you know.
Central versus Winston.
Yep, Central versus Winston.
I'm gonna go with Winston.
Okay, all right. Winston. Okay. All right. I'm going NC. I'm going Central because boo the Rams. All right, now we got Alabama A&M versus Troy.
I'm going with A&M.
A&M. All right. I concur that. I don't know enough about either one of them, honestly, but I'm gonna go with A&M with this one. This next one we got Tuskegee University versus Hampton University. Hampton won the Battle of the Real HU last week versus Howard. Stomped them out, actually. It won't even close. So Howard, y'all are not the real HU for the next 365 days. So who you got, Hampton or Tuskegee?
I don't know how Tuskegee's playing.
They lost last week.
I'm gonna go with Hampton.
Hampton. The Pirates of the Bay. All right, our next game is Morgan State versus Towson.
Ooh.
Morgan State has Bowie State's old head coach who won the last 3 CIAA titles. I do not know if Morgan State won last week. I do not.
I'm gonna go with so that Dr. Maiden don't give me up for adoption. I'm going with Morgan. I'm staying loyal, loyal to my peeps.
I'm gonna rock with Morgan State too. I don't know how Towson's doing this year, and I don't know if Morgan State won last week, but I'm gonna rock with Morgan State. Our next one is Benedict College versus Lane.
I have no idea. Benedict.
I was gonna say Benedict too because I don't know.
I don't know about them.
Lane don't strike me as somebody that you know. Our next one is Albany State versus FAMU. This should be a really interesting match. Albany State is a pretty decent team. FAMU, you know, wants to probably get revenge from last week.
I'm still going with FAM. I'm going with FAM. I'm highly unlikely to root against my Rattlers. I'm gonna go with FAMU as well. My only struggle will be when they play Del State, and then I'll be like,
I'm gonna go with FAMU as well. And then our last game is the Tigers of Savannah State University versus also, I think this is also one of your alma maters, Edward Waters University.
Yeah, EW is the EWC Tigers. That's my alma mater.
We actually got a player from state that transferred down to Edward Waters.
EW. And they're playing Savannah.
Yep, this is Savannah's first game of the season. I think this is Edward Waters' second or third game of the season. So they've had some tune-ups and whatnot. But Savannah State had a really good season last year, dropping down to D2. So they are rearing to probably have another successful season this year.
I'm gonna go with EWC.
All right, EWC.
I'm gonna go with EW.
I'm gonna go with Shay Sharp's alumnus of Savannah State.
Yeah.
I hope they don't make me look like a fool. But all right, so picks are locked in. So let's check back in next week, y'all. once again, thank y'all for joining us today. I hope y'all enjoyed our conversation. Check back in with us next week as we pick up again for House Talk pregame episode number 92. All right, so look, enjoy this football Saturday. Y'all be safe, and we'll holler at you next week.
Peace.